The hosts of bracketology are experts in nothing. They claim no advanced knowledge or profound insights. Instead, they are just three judgmental idiots who really like to bloviate their own opinions whenever given the chance. Take what they have to say with a grain of salt, or not at all. You'll probably be better off that way.
I got judged by my wife about something, and now I'm very curious.
Losing to her in fantasy football?
We all lost to her at fantasy football.
I know.
All of us. But I still get to reap some of the benefits because she's happy about it. So I want to know if I'm the only one who does this. I, as you know, have been slightly under the weather the last couple of days. And this morning I got up and I went downstairs and said good morning, everything. I grabbed a tissue and I blew my nose. And then upon the conclusion of blowing my nose, I pulled my face away from the tissue. I took a brief look at it, and then I closed it and balled it up. And she thought it was so disgusting that I looked at the tissue. Is that a weird thing to do?
I mean, I do think it's a weird thing to do, but I don't think you're alone in doing it.
I mean, I had to see, like, how much did I get out versus how much did it feel like was in there?
Sure.
What color was it? Is it normal? Like, do I need to be concerned about anything? There's important information to be gathered from that.
Yeah. And I mean, as long as you weren't sitting there, playing with it, I think you're fine.
Well, but hold on now. Sometimes you got to check the consistency.
That doesn't mean you have to play with it.
Yeah, like, that's where I draw the line. I'll give it a look and see if everything's like normal or, for me, I had nosebleeds so bad growing up, and since I've moved out to Colorado, my nosebleeds have not improved. So I always check to see if there's blood in it.
A little grim,
yeah,
but yeah,
the same with
dry
the
weather
toilet paper.
But that's terrible.
Again, I don't think you're weird for it because I do think you're
it's
weird
standard
for
operating
it.
procedure. Like, doesn't everyone just and then take a quick look and then toss? What's happening?
I don't think everybody does. I think that many people do, but I don't think that it is normal. Like, I think that we have just been like, what's the right word for it? We've been conditioned. Thank you. I don't know why I can't think of words. Like, I remember, like, when I would blow my nose, my mom would ask me if I wasn't feeling good, like, what color's your snot? Or the doctor would ask me, like, that's a normal thing, but I don't think we need to regularly do that.
So you're saying only if you're feeling ill or under the weather?
Yeah, I think it's a help. It's helpful. That's weird. That's weird.
I disagree. I think
it's a diagnostic tool. I don't think that it is a normal thing to just be like, oh,
look at my treasures.
Look at what I've got.
Look what I made.
Be a little booger goblin. Like, that's not great.
So, I mean, have you all ever, what were they called? The Biore strips? You know what those are?
The Aurora Borealis?
No. So you clean your nose and then you put this strip on your nose and get it wet. And then you let it sit there, harden, and then you peel it off. And it's supposed to pull...
You're talking like a breathe right strip?
No. It pulls the
like
blackheads out of
remover.
your nose. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm familiar.
Okay. So is it weird to like look at those after you've done?
I've never used one of those.
Oh.
I haven't either. So, but I also think it would be weird. Again, here's the thing. I think
it's like a little forest.
No, I don't think that's weird because if I spent the money on that thing, I want to know that it's effective. Like, I want to pull it off and see the things on there. Otherwise, I'm like, well, what the did I just waste? I don't know how much money they are.
You can cuss. This is our podcast.
What did I say?
Like, you censored yourself.
Okay. I want you guys to go out and get some of those strips and try them, and Tell me if you looked at him or not, because for me, when you have a schnoz as big as mine, like it looks like a forest.
Do you have to buy like a special extra large kind, or
Yeah,
like use two, or
I have to get the Biore Magnum.
I hold on. This is I can't let this end here. Again, I think that it's weird, but I think a lot of people do it. Like it's simple.
But doesn't that mean it's not weird?
Yeah.
No, things can be weird even though a lot of people do them.
Okay.
Right? Voting for Trump is weird even though a lot of people do it.
Oh God.
You hear what I mean?
That just got sad.
I think similarly, it's like all the people that like the fucking doctor pimple popper bullshit.
Oh,
like that is the most disgusting thing in the world.
Not gonna lie.
Coming full circle, my wife watches that shit. She loves it.
Yeah, she's
But
wrong.
me looking at my tissue is weird.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Grubb, but you're wrong.
Well, I mean, look
Please
who
don't
she
hurt me.
married. Look who she married. Obviously, her taste is askew.
Yeah. I win the argument by being a loser. Hello, and welcome back to Bracketology, the podcast that definitively decides all things tournament bracket style.
Style.
Oh, I got a step ahead of myself. Anyway, I'll raid your tombs. I'm Scott Grubb.
I am the Final Fantasy, Matt Robinson.
And I'm the link to the past, Dan Default.
What he means by that is that he's the closest step we have to Neanderthals.
The missing link. Yeah,
He is the missing link.
He's most likely to have played the first entry in these franchises we're about to talk about.
Some nerds might think that was a Zelda reference. No, this was a reference to all humans and how we evolved.
Just old. I like how Matt came in strong with the Final Fantasy. Like, that's a good one. And then said his name like the sad clown. Matt Robinson.
How long have we known each other?
I could do this math. 10 years I've known you, Matt. This year will be 10
Both
years.
can still not say my last name right.
What did I say? It's Robinson.
It is Robinson.
Did I say Robinson?
Yes, you did. You piece of shit.
Sorry, I was
I tell people all the time that I'm like, I'll explain my name and they're like, oh, I thought that it was Robinson, or they, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I've known people for a decade that still can't say it right. You two are who I'm thinking of every time I say that.
I was so concerned about your emotional state with how you said your name that I was just not focused on getting it pronounced correctly.
He tranched on your emotional state by mispronouncing it.
Exactly. I just made it worse.
That's why I call you Robin Tickle.
Moving on from that, welcome back to Bracketology. We are here to kick off yet another one of our brackets. We're starting fresh. Matt, what do we have coming up this time around?
So we are moving into a world of video games.
Yeah.
We are moving into the best video game franchise of all time.
Frankly, it's kind of crazy it took us this long to get to this, because if there's one topic that we could even closely call ourselves, well versed in, it's probably video games.
That and food. And it is funny
You call
that
me fat.
We're all well versed in food.
well, we were talking about what bracket we wanted to do for this next one. So it's 2025. I don't know if anybody
Happy New Year.
knows this or not, but it is 2025. And with that being the case, we were like, hey, what if we try something different? What if we do something new? Let's come up with a new bracket. And then we started talking about all the same things that we've done for the last 5 brackets. And it's like, maybe we should try something else. And so we moved into the virtual world to get us into video games. I'm excited for this.
Me too. All right. So let's take a look at our bracket then.
Well, we've got 32. We're doing a full bracket. So 32 different video games. So I don't have we don't have these set up in divisions like we've done for the last few brackets. So I think it's important how we just kind of touch on or talk about like how we landed on these video games. The first and most important thing I feel like that we need to point out is going to be the word franchise in the title of this bracket, because it's not just best video game.
It's not a
video
singular entry.
Right.
We limited it to a specific number of entries, didn't we? What was that?
Yep. So there needed to be 4, I think is what we landed on, at least 4 video games.
It was 5.
Was it 5?
5.
It was
Dan
4
is,
or 5.
on this audio medium, Dan is waving a 5 in the air.
And whispering the number 5. So at least 4 or 5 video games in the franchise in order for it to qualify for the list. We also recognize that there's a clear and definitive number 1 that would be on this list if it was on this list.
Right. Dan, do you want to elaborate?
Yeah. And that would be Mario. On the heels of a very popular movie release and a bajillion different games.
The heels of the movie release are like 70 miles in front of us. We
big heels. But anyway, so
Didn't a Sonic movie just release?
Literally
last
just
week?
happened.
Yeah. But you can't contend with the juggernaut that is the Mario franchise. And
You're right
plus
about that.
all the different variations of Mario Kart, Mario Party, Smash Bros. There's just too much in the corner of that competitor to make it an even match. So in fairness, what we've decided to do is to remove that from this field, let all the other combatants have an equal footing, and then later down the road, what we're going to do is look at and create a bracket of best Mario game, so that way we can hash out all those discussions as well. But that's why Mario's not here.
And don't worry, we realize that there's not a single other podcast that you could possibly listen to that could rank or determine the best Mario game of all time. So we will do that bracket.
We're here
however,
for you.
Right. To Dan's point, it didn't make sense for us to leave Mario on this bracket because we would be going into this with there is no greater, like it would be hard to argue any of the other franchises against that as an entity. Now the second part, like I said, there's no divisions. So essentially we just ranked these 1 through 32 and then kind of put them into different groups and up against their counterpart, I guess you would say. We'll go through each of the entries when we go through them, but everything from Pokemon to fucking Madden to Mass Effect to Silent Hill, like we really have hit every, or tried to hit almost every genre that's out there for video games, as long as it is a franchise. The ranking for these went number of units sold, essentially. So like overall in the franchise, there were a couple, I was going to do revenue, but apparently not all video games revenue is public information. So that was fun to find out.
There's probably some stinkers out there that they don't necessarily want to brag about, you know?
Yeah.
Call of Duty has had its rough days. All right. With that being said, I think we've laid some groundwork. Do we want to get going on this? I'm excited to talk about video games.
Me too.
Yeah.
Okay.
2/3 of us are excited.
Loving the enthusiasm. I think we would just start top left and work our way down.
Yeah, I think we might as well.
All right. I mean, we're coming out of the gate with two pretty strong entries. We've got Pokemon versus Metroid.
Pokemon, this is so easily in terms of number of units sold. Pokemon was by far the number one contender. So the original Pokemon games came out in Japan with Green and Red in 92 or 94, I think it was, Dan.
1996.
90, in Japan, the originals. I know that's when. Oh, was it 97 in America is when they came out?
I do think it was released later here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 96, and it's still going strong. I mean, there are dozens of Pokemon games that have been out there, not just the mobile games for like the Game Boy, the fucking Game Boy Advance. I can't talk. But then you also had like Pokemon Stadium and Pokemon Snap, and those have continued. And then we had the 2016, 2017 phenomenon that was Pokemon Go and is still going on.
Did you all hear about them using that data
to create map systems?
Yeah, to create maps. Genius.
In everyone's terms and conditions.
I mean, it was their plan from the beginning. It was pretty clear.
And I mean, evil corporate overlords, but that's a genius move.
So Pokemon. So let's talk about. We want to discuss a few like key talking points with a lot of these games, right? Longevity, how long have they been going? Accessibility, like who all has access to it? Innovation, like what have they done for the industry or even just for the genre, and replayability.
I have one question, I guess, as far as our credentials here that we're giving each one of them. Do we want to keep the conversation honed in on the video game aspect of it, or and only the video games, or do we take into consideration ways that the franchise has branched out beyond gaming?
I think
for example, sorry, go ahead.
I think that plays into accessibility and innovation, right? For Pokemon, as an example, you've got the card games and then the spin-offs that it is directly impacted. Like without Pokemon, Digimon wouldn't exist. Maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. But
first off, stop hitting the hard E. It's weirding me out. Secondly, I'm talking more like, are we talking movies? Are we talking about merch sales? Are we talking about like, all right, TV shows, et cetera, et cetera?
I think that plays accessibility to me is like how easily you can get merchandise of that franchise as well as play the game. So if they have a mobile version of the game and it's not exclusive to one console, that might be a benefit.
Okay. All right. So Pokemon's clearly got a lot going for it. What about Metroid?
So Metroid, in case you are not a huge gamer, Metroid includes Samus. One of the first big rug pulls in gaming for a lot of people. Like big swerve for people because you have this dope ass like cannon firing character, badass, and then you beat the game and you're like, holy shit, I've been playing as a woman this entire time. Like this was huge for a lot of people. I think Metroid is huge in terms of when it came out, right? It reinvented a genre of video games because it was kind of a platformer, but also a bit of a shooter, plus also a bit of exploratory. So much so that Metroid is one half of an entire genre of video games with Metroidvanias. You know, Metroidvania games are a type of game.
Right. It's a classification. All right. So what do we think? Is this, I mean, I don't want to say that like one side doesn't have its merits. I think they both clearly do. But is this really a close matchup?
So I think it's not realistically.
Yeah.
I do think that given everything, you know, Pokemon just doesn't stand a chance. No, I'm kidding. It is Metroid, unfortunately, kind of got drawn the short straw here because they're going up against what is a juggernaut in Pokemon.
Look, but to be fair, it's not even necessarily that it drew the short straw. You even started your introduction to Metroid by saying, for those who may not be big gamers, like if you got to say that, then clearly the reach just isn't there, you know? Even in all of my years and all of my gaming, I think I've maybe played one Metroid game ever. Um, and I mean, the innovation's certainly there, right? It was groundbreaking of a game. The female protagonist was also groundbreaking, and it's still around. It's still making good games that people enjoy, but I mean, it doesn't hold a candle to Pokemon.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other downside for Metroid is just from an accessibility perspective, there's an entire generation that just wouldn't have gotten. They didn't get a new Metroid game for over a decade. You know what I mean? Like you had Super Metroid, and then you had maybe a Metroid on like, and there may be games, but I'm unaware of them, and I would say a pretty big gamer. Like there's just a span of time where there was no Metroid unless you were playing an old school game.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Pokemon gets my vote.
Yep.
And I love Metroid, but you guys are both correct. Pokemon is just too big. Got to catch them all.
All right, that moves Pokemon up into the second round, taking us down to our next matchup. A little bit of a different matchup:
Oh.
Tomb Raider versus the Elder Scrolls.
Oh, I have a feeling we're gonna have a disagreement on this one somewhere.
So, what do you like most about Lara Croft, Scott?
Action adventure? No.
Polygons?
Pyramids? No, I mean, so I think
Why don't
for
you start
me-
with just a slight introduction for Tomb Raider?
Okay, so Tomb Raider, excuse me, is the story of Lara Croft. She is a British. She's basically a female British Indiana Jones. She is an adventure archaeologist who goes out on these treasure seeking hunts, inspired by her father, who used to do the same, who is no longer alive. And that's kind of the running theme in all the video games. Often she's like seeking something that he wasn't able to find or whatever. Yeah, that's the general plot line of the Tomb Raider games. Of course, Lara Croft is often depicted in a way that some might say is stereotypical, but you know, either way, we're still talking about like you're playing as a female Indiana Jones. Like I said, there's action and adventure. There's puzzles. There's typically like a shooting or you know element like that, and typically again the story, the plot line that runs through it as you're trying to find something, there's generally excitement because usually there's like, you know, there's some kind of creature or creatures guarding whatever you're trying to find. There's an antagonist who's also trying to beat you to whatever you're trying to get to, and so there's a storyline that runs through them. Tomb Raider, I think for me, it hits a real nostalgia point because it was like my first real that I like core memory of being pulled into video games. Like I had an NES growing up and I had Mario Brothers and I definitely remember playing it some, but like getting that because I had the first PlayStation, the first Tomb Raider, getting that game and like the first level, like I can still really remember it. And then they had bits in there where you could like play around in her mansion and there was like an obstacle course set up and everything and like spending a lot of time playing in that and just
Did you lock the butler in
Of course.
yeah.
Yeah, you had to lock the butler in the freezer. Otherwise, he'd follow around and his teacups would clank the whole time, and it was annoying. So yeah, I definitely locked him in the freezer. It's just that's Tomb Raider. That's
So
about
I think it is important to bring up, right? Tomb Raider, similar to Metroid, Tomb Raider kind of was the beginning to a lot of those action adventure treasure hunt type games that you see in Uncharted and some of the others. And there were other attempts, but it was definitely the most successful of the early on, you know,
which
kind of.
again at the time to break into such a male-centered market with a female protagonist. Granted, again,
A couple of big reasons for
a
that.
couple obvious reasons that to point out, but you know, I think that was definitely some innovation and anyway, yeah.
So then they're going up against the Elder Scrolls. Dan, what can you tell us about the Elder Scrolls?
I mean, the Elder Scrolls have been around since 1994, technically, with the first release of the Elder Scrolls Arena, which coincidentally started at, they wanted to have an arena battle style, but they ended up switching. But this game has kind of re-innovated itself several times throughout its career and has become one of the biggest, like, open world RPG games out there. And so much so that it has a huge following of devoted fans that just love the fantasy element. You know, when you play an Elder Scrolls game, you know, you're choosing your race and your skills, and you're making different alliances. You can sneak around and you can steal things. You get caught for stealing. Elder Scrolls was one of the first in that genre to have that kind of in-depth gameplay.
Yeah, so I mean, definitely for me, I think the Elder Scrolls is one of the games that I've played more than any other video game out there.
Yeah.
It is, so there are technically 5 Elder Scrolls games if you don't include Elder Scrolls Online, which is kind of like a running, you know, constantly updated type of game. But to Dan's point, one of the first big things that the Elder Scrolls was kind of noted for was the not just the open world and not just a role-playing game, those existed, but then the experience that you get for doing a specific type of action. So being able to level up or to adjust your character every time you play by just what you do. If you want to be sneaky, that means you just have to be sneaky more frequently, right? And then that increases your ability to be sneaky. If you want to be really good with magic, you have to use a lot of magic, and then that increases your level in doing so.
So you
Similar,
could like kind of pick and choose build your character based on the actions you take.
basically, yeah. And depending on the game, it's, you know, the system's a little bit differently, but what most people are going to think of is Skyrim. And that, I mean, it's been remade 37 times. It's the exact same game. It's absurd. They've made a tremendous amount of money on it. Yeah. And people are, and when I say people, I mainly mean me, are waiting still over a decade later for Elder Scrolls 6.
Yep. Same girl. But it was also like innovative in the fact that it had real world consequences for your decisions. Like if you stole something,
well, by real world.
Well, yeah, in world, I should say, assholes. So it had in world consequences for your decisions. So it was, if not the first game, one of the first games where you could steal something and get a guard's alert, right? And then, you know, or a shop owner or whatever. But you also,
and not just the guard that saw you do it, but it would then spread to the entire policing force for that region.
And it's the same thing with the guilds and things like that. Like, it is truly one of the most innovative franchise for RPGs, period.
Yeah. I think that we need to get to a vote. I'm sorry, Scott. For me, as much as I think
apologizing in advance,
your face just looked so sad
because I feel defeated already.
I know. I do think that Lara Croft and Tomb Raider is a tremendous franchise.
Don't forget Angelina Jolie.
How could I?
She did great. And then there was also the other, I don't know who else. There was another Tomb Raider, Lara Croft. I don't know who it was.
But I do have to throw my vote towards
Mobile
the
game
Elder
too.
Scrolls.
Tomb Raider is a mobile game.
They had a running game didn't they?
Yeah, which is also for accessibility aspect.
The thing is, the Elder Scrolls also has a mobile game.
Yeah. I'm voting.
I've got to throw my vote.
Look, I get where you're coming from. Elder Scrolls definitely has a very significant impact, I think. I don't know. Hold on. Let's see exactly. When did Tomb Raider first release?
1996.
Oh, so it's even got 2 years on it. Damn it, because Arena came out in '94. I'm voting Lara Croft. I think I think she's because of the marketability, the recognition that comes along with Lara Croft. Um, Again, the impact on Tomb Raider on the action adventure category. Um, I don't know, and maybe it's just my bias. I'm not gonna lie, Elder Scrolls is not my type of game, so I'm gonna say Tomb Raider. There we go. It's a tie. Dan, how about you?
All right. So as much as I love Tomb Raider, and I do think that it had some really good innovation, and you can go to arcades and they have like a big Tomb Raider game that's basically compiled of the mini games that are in the newer editions of that series. You just can't top what Elder Scrolls has done in an award-winning fashion, time and time again. Elder Scrolls gets my vote. And yes, hurry up and release Elder Scrolls 6, please.
Yeah, for fuck's sake. That
They
moves
only
Elder
announced it 7
Scrolls.
years ago.
I know.
Yeah,
Trust me, I know.
them and Rockstar.
Oh
Yeah.
man, yeah. We'll
So
get
we've
to
got an
them later.
interesting matchup in the second round for right away Pokemon versus Elder Scrolls in the next
I
round.
hate
But that moves us into our next matchup. Dan, who's up next?
I hate this matchup. I hate that this fell together because these are two of my favorite franchises in Zelda and Fallout. Zelda started on the NES, and it was realistically the first sandbox world. And the creator did that based on his own adventures in Japan and how he loved to explore and built the game around finding things to unlock new areas. And it was just groundbreaking. The second, the Fallout franchise um, is definitely more recent than Zelda. The first couple of games were not as fan favorite as the rest of the entries, but boy, when they hit their stride, they hit their stride. So much so that they have all kinds of merch, a TV show that was really really good, and a rich lore about the Fallout world and what happened. And as a side note, I absolutely love the 50s aesthetic to Fallout world. I just love everything about it.
Reminds you
I,
of growing up.
yeah, a little bit. I hate everything about the fact that these two have to face off right now, and I have to choose one over the other.
Well, I think the downside for the first round is that almost all of these games are tremendous games. So, like
Yeah,
going up against each other, I hear you though. So Fallout is comes from the. It also comes from Bethesda, doesn't it?
yes.
So it is the same video game company that makes the Elder Scrolls.
It wasn't originally Bethesda, but
It
Bethesda
got
has,
bought up to them.
yeah.
Yep.
So Zelda, I think. So Zelda definitely has the longevity associated here. I mean, it is a long running game. The first one came out for the NES, what, 92,
No, 86.
93, 86?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
God
I have one
damn.
of the
So
gold cartridge versions from 1986.
that's expensive, bro. Like, that's a
I
collector's.
think maybe it's a
item.
regular gray.
No, they only made the gold.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
Which one am
Are
I
they really
thinking
collector's
of?
items?
Well, there's
Anyway.
a
Yes.
Zelda game that's gold that is definitely a collector's item.
I'll
Yes,
have to go
and
double check my box downstairs.
that is the original one, and if you have the case and it's in good condition, it's worth it.
Probably a few
I'm pretty sure I
grand.
do. Anyway,
So here's the thing for me about both of these games. I think that Zelda is, you want to talk about lore, man. Like, that is
Yeah.
a lore heavy game. I love it. I love everything about it. Fallout is also a very lore heavy game. It's not as, it hasn't been around that long. I think the big,
Original Fallout was released in 1997.
wow. I think the big difference between the two, though, is the accessibility. because Zelda is a Nintendo only franchise. So you have to have a Nintendo system in order to play a Zelda game. Like you can't play Breath of the Wild on Xbox. Man, what I wouldn't do. Fallout, though, is available to every major system, basically, except for Nintendo.
I I feel like I have to step in here as the voice of the listener.
Okay.
Fellas, what are we talking about here? Like, I know
Zelda
we want to
versus
give
Fallout.
everyone their flowers, but it's Zelda. Like, come on. We could speed round this one. Are we really going to talk about this?
I'm not entirely sold that Zelda beats out Fallout.
Are you kidding me?
So here's my thing.
Okay.
Here's my thing, okay? I never got into the older Zelda games. Like they didn't capture my attention.
It doesn't matter if you did.
I'm the one voting, bitch.
But
It only matters if I did.
Hold on. What do you classify as older? Like, are you saying Link to the Past or the original Zelda or Zelda 2?
Both. Like I didn't really get into a Zelda game until the Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. And even that I played once or twice and then didn't really go back to it. However, the new Zelda games, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, specifically Breath of the Wild, is a meditative state for me. Like I can just play that and I can zone out.
Those two games alone beat everything that Fallout brings to the table. I mean, just those alone. Then when you go back and you think about all the lore and you look at huge hits like the N64 titles and even all the way back to the NES titles, Fallout doesn't stand a chance, guys. Like, come on.
Are we trying to put this to a vote? Because I would rather rip the Band-Aid off of this.
I mean, give it its flowers. I'm glad y'all have enjoyed it, but I want to make sure we get through these brackets in a respectable amount of time. So I'm going to vote Zelda.
Dan, who would you vote for?
It kills me to do this, but I am also going Zelda because the innovation of that first open world exploration on the NES. And Matt, I have told you that you're wrong on numerous occasions. I've never meant it more than when I say you're wrong about the original Zelda and Super Nintendo Zelda Link to the Past, because those games are masterpieces. And the same song has carried through all of those games, and it is iconic. It is everywhere. The Master Sword or the Master Shield, all of those things. Zelda is just too hard to beat.
I never said that it's a bad game. I just said it didn't capture me. So, all right, if I will then agree and then throw my vote towards Zelda because again I was kind of in the middle. And we'll move on to. Why are you sorry?
I'm sorry to Fallout because I truly do love that series.
They're not listening. It's okay.
To a video game franchise?
Yes.
All right, that gets us into our last matchup in the first division, which is going to be, again, two more juggernauts, Final Fantasy versus Mega Man.
Okay, again, I'm just looking at runtime here and knowing we got a whole nother division to do. I'm not saying yes or no to this question. I'm asking it to you two first. Do we feel like this is a quick vote or does it merit a lot of discussion? We should talk about what they are, but can we go from introduction straight to vote, or do we need debate?
I think we can go from introduction to vote, personally. So, Final Fantasy is a long-running role-playing game, turn-based role-playing game, really has put the JRPG and turn-based role-playing games on its back for the last 35 years, versus Mega Man. Mega Man kind of being an old school, again, side-scroller shooter, similar to Metroid, but without the same type of map exploration. Mega Man's been around for a very long time. I love Mega Man. I loved Mega Man Soccer. Was one of my favorite games on Super Nintendo. Just an FYI.
Both started in 1987.
Damn.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. As a matter of
But
fact, hold on, no way. They released one day apart from each other.
holy shit, really?
Final Fantasy came out December 18th, 1987. Mega Man beat it by one day, coming out on December 17th, 1987. What an interesting matchup.
It is an interesting matchup. On that note, it's Final Fantasy. So I'm going to go Final Fantasy for my vote.
So,
All right, right out the gate.
Well, that's what we said.
No, I know. I'm. Yeah. Okay.
I will say this: Mega Man 2, when you get to the Dr. Wily stage, has one of the best video game songs of all time. If you haven't listened to it, go listen to it.
You can listen to an entire Mega Man playlist while you're working and be more productive than you've ever been in your life.
Ooh, it does have some hype. Like,
yeah,
that's.
I mean,
good. Like, put it on, clean the garage type music. Like, you
you won't
some
stop.
of the composers for the original NES were just chef's
to
kiss.
do it with a fucking 8-bit cartridge
system,
is amazing.
Yeah. That being said, though, Final Fantasy gets my vote. It's just so good.
Yeah, I mean, of the two, I've honestly never been a big Mega Man fan. Like, I've never really played many of the games. I'm not a big side scroller fan in general, to be honest with you. Outside of like maybe Mario, but that's just because it's Mario. And again, why he's not on this list. And I've definitely never been a Final Fantasy person, but I recognize the experience. I know people who have lost years of their life to Final Fantasy 7 or 9 or whichever one's the best.
7 or 10.
7, 8, 9, 10. I mean, honestly, it just depends on who
Isn't
you ask.
11 really good too? Anyway, I know people have gone crazy for it. So yeah, Final Fantasy gets my vote.
Yeah,
right there. The fact that we can just keep saying numbers and they,
yeah.
So
there are entire groups of people that identify as Final Fantasy characters. So
yeah, well, that's true too.
It moves on.
Do we want to jump across or keep going down?
I'm afraid to go down, but I think we need to. So let's go to our next matchup.
I don't like this one.
Welcome to my Zelda Fallout.
No, all right. No, you know what? Let's go ahead. I'm still not going to like it.
Introduce what the matchup is.
We have next. Sorry, I'm the one who's just talking over here. We have the number 1 seed, that should be noted, Grand Theft Auto, versus the number 8 seed, that should be noted. There's a big disparity there, Baldur's Gate.
Now, it's the number 1 versus the number 8 seed in this particular division. Grand Theft Auto is the number 4 overall in terms of number of units sold, which again, that's ridiculous on this list. It is the number 4 overall.
Dude, it's like the single highest earning single piece of media of all time. So like you can't, like, yeah, Pokemon's the most valuable franchise or whatever, but the Grand Theft Auto game and its related online component and all the shark cards and everything like that, and the number of units it specifically sold makes it the single highest grossing piece of single media ever. That's crazy.
Versus what is kind of, I would say, the incumbent in the last 2 years, which is Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate, I don't think without Baldur's Gate 3, Baldur's Gate wouldn't be on this list, period. Like, it just wouldn't. But Baldur's Gate 3 is one of the greatest games I've ever played.
That really was my kind of like argument that gave me a bit of relief going into this conversation is it the best video game franchise, or just does it maybe have the best game on this list?
Yeah, that's definitely the hardest part. I never played any of the other Baldur's Gate. That's not true. I've dabbled. Like, I've dipped a toe in the Baldur's Gate waters that isn't Baldur's Gate 3.
But I mean, the same could be said for Grand Theft Auto. I mean, realistically, Scott, did you play the original Grand Theft Auto that came out in 1997?
On my original PlayStation, the little top down. Yes, yeah. I absolutely did. I have legitimately played every single Grand Theft Auto game. And I'm not trying like. I knew that where that question was coming from. Maybe not, but like, or maybe that does make me a diehard fan of this series. But yes, I have actually played all the way back to the original PS1 version. Maybe it just makes me a degenerate. I don't know.
This just reminded me of. Anyway, I'll come back to it.
Okay.
So are we jumping right into a vote here, gentlemen?
I mean, do you feel comfortable with the vote, Dan, or do you have any
I
comments to
do.
add in? Sure, then let's vote. What's your vote? Well, Scott, let's start with yours. What's your vote?
I mean, Grand Theft Auto. There's a reason that the games, even going all the way back to 3, GTA 3 and Vice City and San Andreas and the add-ons like Ballad of Gay Tony and what was the biker one called?
That is completely irrelevant.
The biker
anyway,
one.
Yeah, and then all up to 4 and 5 and all those, like, there's a reason that those games have been like rebundled and then re-released because people want to go back and revisit them. We all, I think, have strong memories of driving, cars down through Vice City and listening to 80s songs on the radio, and then all the way up through 5, and now the online. Like, it's such a huge juggernaut of a game, and the anticipation that it currently exists for 6 to come out at the end of this year, more likely next year. Hashtag 2025 prediction. Baldur's Gate 3 is undoubtedly, if we were talking single video game, it'd be hard to beat. But 1 and 2 were barely blips on the radar compared to the scale that 3 had. GTA has been consistently great. It's GTA for me.
Matt, what's your vote?
I mean, I think with Baldur's Gate, like Scott even just said, like 1 and 2, but realistically, it was Baldur's Gate, some random subtitle, Baldur's Gate, some random subtitle again, Baldur's Gate returned to the first subtitle, Baldur's Gate 2, then Baldur's Gate 3, something else. I love Baldur's Gate. I think that BG3, again, was one of the best games made ever. Just from a story perspective, the voice acting is so incredibly good. The everything, the graphics were incredible. The ability to just pick a dick, like you could just choose whatever dick you want.
An important part of every character customization.
Look, talk about innovation, but in terms of a franchise, it just doesn't have it.
Medium realistic. Anyway,
it doesn't have the power that Grand Theft Auto does. I'm not even a big fan of GTA. Like, it's fine. And I've played a bunch, but I'm not counting down the days like Scott is to take vacation to play the 6th one. But I have to vote for Grand Theft Auto. As sad as it is for BG3, your brethren let you down.
I agree. Even though my vote is moot at this point, Grand Theft Auto is the superior franchise. Baldur's Gate 3, amazing, but I still wouldn't put that up against Vice City and driving around in the 80s.
Game v game, it's hard. I would say you can pick any of the current released GTAs. If it was up against just BG3, it would be a hell of a lot closer battle.
Yeah, I completely agree. Those two games very close, but once you get into that lineage, man, and you're not wrong. When GTA, like my wife and I already have it planned out. When GTA 6 comes out, she's taking the kids, going to her mom's for like 2 days, and I'm getting a weekend home alone with that game. I'm taking time off from work. I'm so excited. Anyway,
what gets us into our next matchup, Dan?
This one we have Borderlands versus Five Nights at Freddy's. Borderlands, really fun game about finding these super valuable vaults and going around these desolate worlds and fighting all these crazy cast of characters in this post-apocalyptic setting. Five Nights at Freddy's, you're trying to survive a weird haunted Chuck E. Cheese.
So I don't know why, but I do want to call out, you for some reason have the hardest time saying that game's name, and it's really getting to me. So say it one more time.
Which one?
Five Nights
Five
at
Nights at Freddy's.
Can we get a
Nailed
clean can we get a clean one? Oh no.
Hold on, yeah, these are probably the two games on this entire list that I am least familiar with, and only because I personally didn't play them.
Ooh. Okay. So just throwing this out there. If at any point you want to revisit and do like a co-op playthrough of all the Borderlands games, you can sign me up. Because I enjoy the Borderlands games quite a bit. I've played through a couple of them like in co-op gameplay and they're super fun.
I can't remember which Borderlands it is, but it opens up with that Cage the Elephant song, and that is probably one of the most badass openings in a game.
It
So
was
good.
It was like it became synonymous with they became synonymous with each other. It was number 2, by the way.
So to give a little bit more credence to Five Nights at Freddy's than what Dan gave it, it's a horror game. It is a horror survival game where it's not super complex by any means. You have to like watch cameras, watch videos to see if any of these haunted animatronics, which is absolutely fucking terrifying, come to life and come try to kill you. Like, and then they will. What?
Go ahead.
Well, and then like won't one of the animatronics like lock you inside and then you die inside of it?
Yes, yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Have either of you ever actually played a Five Nights at Freddy's game?
I played the first one.
Did you?
I didn't.
It doesn't seem like your thing, Matt.
Yeah, I haven't played any of the Five Nights at Freddy's games. So my ex
upcoming Twitch stream.
No. My ex had a son who loved Five Nights at Freddy's. Like he was, I don't know, 7 when he started playing it, and I'm like, this makes no sense to me. I didn't want to be in the room when he played it.
I'm almost concerned that we're maybe a little outside the generation that puts Five Nights at Freddy's on this list, you know?
I can agree with that, but I also think that it's still important because I feel like I don't know if it like, I think it was a good introduction to gaming for a lot of that generation, right?
Yeah,
that Minecraft and fucking Roblox or something is really what, and Fortnite all kind of together was the introduction to gaming for an entire generation of kids.
Yeah. They memed the hell out of it.
It came out in 2014. So I doubt very seriously at that time we were its target demographic. But here's my thing. In terms of horror games, like this one, Matt, you just said, your ex's son was 7 years old, played it. When my niece was young, she would play it. And, that speaks to kind of the accessibility. Like, it's not the best horror game on the market.
Or even on this list.
Yeah.
But the jump scares are fairly legit. Like, we do have to give it that.
Yeah,
part of the reason that we don't like to play it is because it hurts our back when we're like, like it's not made for us. But my thought though is when you're thinking about like the accessibility, the replayability, is that high enough and greater enough for that generation to put Five Nights at Freddy's over what I presume would be our pick, Borderlands? Like, there's Five Nights at Freddy's like plush dolls, and like I said, they memed the crap out of that game, and there's toys in the toy aisle, and there's board game versions, and there's it's been
isn't there a movie coming out soon?
There has been a movie.
There's
already.
been a movie, yeah. Borderlands also had a movie. Now hold on, wait, let's look.
Real bad.
Five Nights. Well, what was Five Nights at Freddy's? So the Rotten Tomato. Oh, geez. Okay. The Five Nights at Freddy's Rotten Tomatoes score, the critics was 32, the audience 86.
Now tell us what Borderlands was.
Borderlands, the critics was 10, the audience is 50.
Oof.
So
Borderlands got hit hard.
That is surprising. I knew the Borderlands movie got bad reviews. Like I heard bad things about it, but seeing it that much more poorly compared to the Five Nights at Freddy's movie really puts into perspective how bad the movie is. I've not seen it yet. I'm still kind of curious to try, but that's nuts.
Okay, so to throw it out there for Five Nights at Freddy's a little bit, I do think that it's going to be difficult for us to say if Five Nights at Freddy's is going to have the replayability and the, the longevity that a Borderlands or something else is, because for the people that it will be nostalgic for, we don't even know if their nostalgia is going to be the same as ours, right? Like we are, as a generation, we are so focused on nostalgia. It's possible that it just disappears and then they forget about it forever, which is a
But
possibility, but we won't know that.
yes, but if it's something that's as large and impactful and is again meme heavy and everything as it is now, like again, think back to your childhood. What were the things that you've carried forward and are now nostalgic for you? It's the things that you were always visible to. It was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles you always watched. For me, it was the Power Rangers I always watched. That's what this is going to be for them. And then on top of that, when you think replayability, it kind of has a bit of an unfair advantage in my mind because Borderlands is a long story based driven game where you're playing for multiple hours and then you conclude and then you have to wait some time and kind of forget the story before you could go back to do it. Five Nights and Freddy's is like a Fortnite. You play, a 10-15 minute round and you win or lose and you restart the next one and you can do that over and over and over again. And that dopamine hit is, I mean, think about how many more hours the three of us have put in Fortnite than any other game, and it can continue to be that way.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
yeah,
let's get to a vote because I think it's going to be difficult no matter what. I also think that they're going up against an incredible juggernaut in the next round. So I
that's true
think
too.
for me, for the fact that I haven't played much of either of these, I think I attribute Five Nights at Freddy's to being a gateway game for a generation. I also think that it was a very big streamed game for a lot of like Twitch streamers and things like that for kids. I think I'm going to give my vote to Five Nights at Freddy's
Wow.
just based on that. Not that I don't know about Borderlands or that I don't think that it's, going to be long lasting, but I think that it deserves at least a vote. Daniel?
Yeah. I understand what you're saying about Five Nights at Freddy's, and I get that. But the one thing I know that it was a gateway game and got a lot of kids interested in video games and might have sent them down a rabbit hole of like the horror
Creating
game.
Slender Man? Oh,
Yeah,
continue.
the horror man, or the horror game.
I like Horror Man. We should make a character called Horror Man.
But if you're talking about franchise, there's not a whole lot of innovation in that gameplay, and it's not even the best horror game on this list. Borderlands, although it is a first-person shooter, there wasn't a whole lot of innovation. I think it is, in terms of the games, been consistent. My vote's going Borderlands. This is closer than I thought it would be, though, if I'm being honest.
I'm not gonna lie. It's closer than you realize because now it's tied and I'm the tiebreaker and I'm not 100% sure because the storytelling, the artistic nature, uh, choices that they've made in Borderlands, I think really play to its favor. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it has some marketability too. Like I've seen Claptrap little action figures and things like that in stores and
I mean,
movie.
Borderlands has ruled Hot Topic at times.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the movie ate shit, which is crazy. But I do think it's kind of a bit of a negative for Five Nights at Freddy's. I was looking. The first game was released in 2014, so we're talking basically 10 years. Um, they've had like 17 games come out in that time frame, which at first glance sounds like an achievement, but when you think about it, that really just means it's a lot of churn and burn. It's a lot of like copied material that they're just slightly editing.
Upgrading the graphics slightly.
Yeah, it's to me, I do kind of associate it with um, like low quality game creation, um, and that makes it tough. But from like an overall media product, it does seem like it's bigger. I think this might technically be our first upset of this bracket. I love the Borderlands games, but I think I have to recognize Five Nights at Freddy's impact and longevity here and put it ahead.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure I'm fully comfortable with my pick either, but it feels more righter.
Sure.
Yeah, as long as it feels more righter.
On that note, we move on to our next matchup. This is another fucking like wallop of a matchup here.
Really?
Halo versus Gears of War. Just in terms of they're similar esque games, right?
They're
They
both
come
Xbox
from the same
exclusive. Yeah.
They come from the same system. They're both Xbox exclusive, and they both have a large number of entries into their franchises. So Halo started on the original Xbox. I think Gears of War started on the 360 initially. So not that far apart.
Is that right? I don't know. You keep talking, I'll look.
Both shooting games, both have unique weapons. When you talk about like Melee, when you have the fucking sword in
Chainsaw
Halo
thing.
versus the
Oh.
chainsaw gun in Gears of War. I don't know.
Yeah, you're right.
I look
Gears
at these as being very similar in a lot of ways, but to me, there's an easy winner.
Hold on. Halo was first released in November 2001. Gears of War, the first release, wasn't until 2013.
No. It was 2006. Gears of War was released November 7th, 2006, 5 years later on the Xbox 360.
Okay.
So, okay, wait. You're already looking at stop looking at the Wikipedia. Before we go any further, I want to just ask you a quick question.
Me or Dan?
And if you've seen, both of you, if you've seen it in a Wikipedia or in your research, then just say so. But who do you play in Gears of War? What's the main character's name?
Bandana guy.
Dan?
I couldn't tell you.
What's the main character in Halo? Who do you play?
Master Chief.
All right, let's move on Halo and get this out of the way.
Yeah.
Like, let's be Gears of War was great, and Matt, you're 100% right. There's definitely a linked similarity between the two. I spent a lot of time playing multiplayer versions of these games with the same friend groups, but it's Halo. Hey, Gears of War is great. I loved my time with it. It came out right after I started college, so it was a great timing for me to get it. But it's Halo.
Yeah, it's hard to argue. So I really just wanted to give a little bit there because I do think they are similar. But yeah, it is Halo. Like, let's be real.
By the way, it's Marcus Phoenix. That's who you play in Gears of War.
No, bandana guy.
Yeah, you're 100% right. The only thing I
can envision him in my mind perfectly as the guy wearing a bandana,
holding the assault rifle with the chainsaw attached.
Yeah,
absolutely. But that blue sword, cooler. All right, last matchup: Sonic versus Doom.
So this is tough for me because I think Sonic definitely
has the best tater tots. Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're 100% right about that.
I think Sonic the Hedgehog was definitely groundbreaking in certain aspects, but it was still a side-scrolling platformer. It just introduced fast running and some cool things that you could do. Doom, on the other hand, innovated the first-person shooter genre. Like, it was the first, and there were so many Doom copies that came out and games that tried to be like Doom, like Duke Nukem. All of those things were
Redneck Rampage.
All of those things were trying to be Doom. And although there have been some real stinkers in the Doom franchise and an even stinkier movie starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, um, you
Thank you
can't
for listening, Dwayne. We know you are.
you can't understate how innovative that first Doom was.
Yeah, but it's Sonic.
Yeah, dude, it's Sonic, man. Like,
mean-
you can't. I'm not. I don't want to just shit on everything that you just said, because
But
it
you're
is
gonna
true.
shit. You're pulling
No.
down your pants to shit on it right now.
It is true, but Sonic was the only successful competitor to Mario.
Yeah.
Not just that, but when Mario kept doing the same thing over and over again and 3D consoles came out, Sonic changed. They adjusted. They adapted. They survived and created. You want to talk about fucking lore heavy games, man? You can go down a 2.5 week rabbit hole of looking at Sonic lore, like the fucking Chaos Emeralds, the
Chaos
fucking
Emeralds.
extra characters that they have, his weird romances with different characters, Shadow the Hedgehog, dopest character of all time, other than Knuckles. It's incredible, and realistically, I sunk so many hours into Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and 2 on Sega. I cannot tell you the last time I picked up a Doom game.
I have the newest Doom game for PlayStation. It's not bad. A lot of
there you go. It's not bad.
A lot of metal in it, but I get what you're saying. I'm just trying to pay some respect to how innovative Doom was.
You're not wrong about that. And again, it's been to the point where it's been memed. Like, there's literally a whole thing about, like, will it run Doom? Like, people buy smart fridges and then they emulate copies of Doom on it and play it with like, sure, it's definitely had its impact, and it certainly has a longevity that can't be ignored.
Did you all have the TI-83 calculators that you could run Doom?
Yeah. So its longevity certainly is there, and I guess you give it points for accessibility for that. But I mean, Sonic is an icon, right?
I mean, it was even memed before memeing was a thing, right? Like Duke Nukem was literally just a copy paste of Doom with some of the same dialogue. Like, literally, it's, and it is the original Doom. Again, if this was a game versus game, I think it would have a much better chance. But just from a franchise perspective, it's Sonic,
Yeah. All right. I think I'm going to put Sonic through just purely based on Ben Schwartz's vocal performance as him in the movies as well.
He does a great job with it.
Speaking of which, I'm going to reach out. I'm going to see if we can get him on the next episode, or on the next time.
On the next episode.
The next time we discuss Sonic in 2 weeks. I'm going to reach out.
All
right, gentlemen. We're through round 1, part 1. How do we feel? I think that was
painful.
Good. Yeah, there were some tough parts, but I think we did all right.
Don't be a bitch. All right. I think it was okay.
All right.
I mean, realistically, I think that I don't think there were a ton of surprises. Five Nights at Freddy's, sure. But I think we're going to start getting into more and more difficult matchups.
Yeah.
So
with this bracket,
Matt, your next episode, we've got 16 more competitors. Which matchup are you most excited for?
Oh man.
Give us a little preview of next week. Pick a matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a similar to a Halo versus Gears of War, I think Call of Duty versus Mass Effect will be an interesting conversation. Because again, I think you have somewhat similar mechanics, but much different games. And I think that's kind of cool.
Nice. All right. Well, next week we've got, again, 16 more competitors. We'll have 8 matchups. We'll finish out round 1. Before we get to that, though, closing out this episode, I want to give a major shout out to my fellow bracketeer, Matt, for the awesome graphics you saw.
We're not bracketeers.
We're the lead bracketeers.
We're co-hosts.
Okay, fine. I want to give a shout out to my fellow co-host, Matt, for the awesome graphics that you saw at the beginning of this episode. please, if you're listening to this in a podcast format, take a minute, go find the episode on YouTube as well. If nothing else, just to watch the beginning and see the opening that Matt created, and then stick around or skip forward or whatever. If you're watching on YouTube, stick around to the very end. He also made a credit scene that is just work of art as well. So shout out to him. Please make sure you check those things out. So thank you, Matt.
Yeah. And while you're there watching Matt's fantastic work, like and subscribe.
Yeah. Everyone who's already done that, thank you. If you haven't, please do. It helps a lot. Share the podcast as well. That is incredibly helpful.
Never mind.
I want to thank Aaron O'Donnell from Aaron O'Donnell Music for the on YouTube for the tracks you hear at the beginning and end of every episode.
Should we talk about the fact that we have an open Discord now?
We do have a Discord now. We probably should have said this earlier too. You can find it on our social medias. And I believe I updated our link tree with it. But anyway, you can find it on our social medias. We have a Discord. So if you want to interact with fellow bracketeers or the three of us as co-hosts, we are looking forward to using it as a platform to get feedback about the podcast, ways we can improve, ways we can change, ideas for future brackets. It's open, fair game. We're also using it for gaming and chatting with each other as well. So please take a look, hop in the conversation. We'd love to have you. Is that it? Did we hit everything? Is that an episode?
I think that's an episode.
All right. Well, in that case, then consider your tombs rated. I have been Scott.
I've been the Final Fantasy, Matt.
Oh, man. And I'm still linking to your past, Dan Default.
Oh, that doesn't sound great at all. Bye-bye.